Viewer discretion is advised.
A large jet aircraft has just crashed out here. Large, like airliner style.
You could smell the jet fuel. You could smell the hydraulic fluid. You could smell death.
We're going to scour this swamp quadrant by quadrant.
NTSB investigators face an unprecedented challenge.
My first thought is, how am I going to pull this off?
It's up to Greg Feith and his team to figure out why Valujet Flight 592 erupted in flames.
Fire!
Just minutes after takeoff.
Okay, let's start it up.
We had a raging fire.
We almost destroyed their test facility.
The Secretary of Transportation lost his job. The administrator of the FAA lost his job because of this one accident.
Completely on fire.
It has been 6 months since Florida's worst aviation disaster.
Valujet forced many people in this agency to ask some very tough questions.
Federal hearings into the fiery crash of Valujet Flight 592 are filled with controversy and recrimination.
I'm the mother of the captain of Valujet 592, Captain Kendallin Chamberlain Kubek, and I am very angry.
This was one of these historic cases that had a tremendous amount of public attention and public concern.
I have always thought this crash was very preventable and very senseless.
Valujet 592 fell out of the sky because of a complete breakdown of the system.
The Federal Aviation Administration is under attack for failing to implement safety recommendations made 8 years ago after another onboard fire. In 1988, an American Airlines crew managed to land their burning DC-9 and save the lives of all 120 passengers.
The Federal Aviation Administration required fire and smoke detection and/or fire extinguishment systems as the Safety Board recommended in 1988. Valujet Flight 592 would not have crashed.
The 105 passengers that were put in danger by that bureaucratic failure boarded a Valujet DC-9 on the morning of May 11th, 1996. Flight 592 is a short 1.5-hour trip from Miami to Atlanta, Georgia.
Let me help you with that.
Valujet was one of the first low-cost carriers. People, instead of driving, they were getting on this low-fare blue and white airplane with the cartoon character.
There's some little haircuts in there too.
It's the crew's second flight of the day on this plane. Commanding Flight 592 is 35-year-old Kendallin Kubek. Captain Kubek is an experienced pilot with nearly 9,000 flight hours.
Okay.
The first officer is a former Air Force pilot. 52-year-old Richard Hazen.
Clear to start?
Proceed.
Shoulder mounts.
On.
Parking brakes.
On.
Today's flight is loaded with almost 2,000 kilograms of cargo, which includes passenger luggage, Valujet company material, and U.S. mail. The crew must sign off on all cargo loaded on board. With the paperwork complete, they prepare to taxi to the runway.
Critter 592, taxi to runway 9er left.
A 9 left, Critter 592.
The DC-9 is 27 years old. It has more than 68,000 hours of flight time. On the flight into Miami from Atlanta that day, the autopilot wasn't working, and the PA system was broken.
Want to test out the PA, talk to the people?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, from the cockpit, we are in a hall right now for crossing traffic on the ground.
Mechanics in Miami were able to fix the PA.
It works. We can hear you loud and clear.
Critter 592, runway 9 left, cleared for takeoff.
But repairs to the autopilot will have to wait.
Set takeoff power.
Once the DC-9 is back at airline headquarters in Atlanta,
Power is set.
mechanics there will work on the problem.
Rotate.
The sky was relatively benign that May day, and they were just looking forward to getting home.
Positive routes.
There was no portent at all about that flight.
Gear up.
Without the autopilot, the pilots will manually fly the aircraft for the return flight. It's an inconvenience, but not all that unusual, nor unsafe.
What was that?
I don't know.
We got some electrical problem.
Yeah, that battery charger's kicking in.
The plane's batteries are draining fast. Captain Kubek worries she could lose power to her instrument panel and other key flight systems.
We're losing everything.
Just 6 minutes after takeoff, the crew is facing a barrage of failures.
Critter 592, contact Miami Center on 132.45. So long.
Controllers in Miami believe Flight 592 is safely on its way to Atlanta. But in the cockpit, Captain Kubek decides to turn around.
We need to go back to Miami.
It's suddenly clear why their systems are failing. Flames are burning through the cabin floor.
.592 needs immediate return to Miami.
Kubek has to get the burning plane on the ground as quickly as possible.
You can only shed altitude so fast. You point it down much more than 5 or 6 degrees, and all of a sudden you can become in an overspeed situation. You can stress the aircraft, and you don't want to do that.
Roger, Critter 592, turn left heading 270. Descend and maintain 7,000 feet. What kind of problem are you having?
Fire!
Smoke in the cabin. Smoke in the cabin.
Okay, roger that.
First officer is handling the communication. The captain is handling the airplane. They want to try to get on the ground. They're working in a coordinated fashion. Classic cockpit resource management. Nobody is panicking. Nobody is throwing in the towel.
What altitude?
7,000.
Captain Kubek throttles back in an attempt to descend, but the left engine doesn't respond. It stays at climb power. As the right engine slows, the plane banks to the right. She discovers her ailerons still have life and manages to stabilize the plane.
That was a good crew up in the nose of that airplane.
Passengers are in a desperate fight for survival, but there's no escaping the onboard flames, which are burning at over 1,000 degrees Celsius. Toxic smoke is filling the entire cabin.
This is heavy, poisonous smoke. People are breathing it in.
When a fire is on board, there's a real sense of helplessness. There's a limited number of things you can do.
Take short breaths.
Less than 10,000 feet above southern Florida, Captain Kubek has the plane in a tight turn back to the airport.
Completely on fire.
The crew of Flight 592 has only seconds to get the burning DC-9 onto a runway. before all is lost.
Cleared 592. We need the closest airport available.
Clear 592. They're going to be standing by for you.
Emergency crews in Miami prepare for the landing.
The airplane starts losing altitude progressively. The airplane is out of control.
The first officer's request for an alternate airport are the last words controllers hear from the crew. The DC-9 plummets toward the ground at over 700 kilometers per hour. Flight 592 has crashed into one of the most inhospitable spots on Earth, the Florida Everglades.
A large jet aircraft has just crashed out here, large, like airliner size. Need to get your choppers in the air.
The Everglades covers much of the southern tip of Florida. Hundreds of square kilometers of shallow swamp, mangroves, and watery grassland. Just getting to the crash site will be a huge challenge for rescuers. .592 in swampland, far from the nearest highway.
Federal safety officials say it's the most difficult recovery operation they've ever faced, with wreckage strewn like confetti in a muddy, alligator-infested swamp that can only be reached by helicopter or airboat.
A very waterous, marshy area, and that's proving difficult to reach people that may have survived this crash.
Rescuers know that the first hours of this rescue operation are critical. In 1972, Eastern Airlines Flight 401 crashed into the Everglades, 6 kilometers from the Valujet crash site. Several passengers drowned before rescuers could reach them.
Yeah, to be in the Everglades after the crash, it was utter devastation, destruction. The smell, you could smell the jet fuel. You could smell the hydraulic fluid. You could smell death.
Most of the aircraft has sunk beneath the surface of the swamp.
The wreckage was in the Everglades. It's a hostile environment. It wasn't clear at that point how much we'd be able to learn from the wreckage or be able to recover.
We suited up as best as possible. We first put on that Tyvek suit, and then we put on an extra sleeve, put 2 surgical gloves on, put a pair of work gloves on, and then they duct taped the work gloves to the Tyvek suit.
The heavy gear protects rescuers from spilled fuel and other toxins. But below the surface of the swamp lurks an even deadlier threat.
They had to have a sharpshooter on top of the airboat at all times.
The crash site is a nesting ground for alligators.
As the divers were walking in the water, if somebody sighted an alligator or you'd hear them hiss in the sawgrass, they would take pot shots to try and scare them away.
Just hours after the crash, officials come to a grim conclusion.
It doesn't look good that there are any survivors.
All 105 passengers on board Flight 592 are dead. Captain Kubek, First Officer Richard Hazen, and 3 flight attendants are also dead.
I feel that it's going to be difficult, if not impossible, to identify everybody.
There was no evidence of the airplane, there was just debris. Very little present, no evidence of passengers.
You had to put it out of your mind what actually you were doing. You could not think of what it was that you were picking up. If you did, you would be useless and you wouldn't be able to do the job.
My initial reaction in a situation like that is just, it's anger. It's not again, it's how can this happen, it's what happened, why.
The wait is almost over.
Police agents at the site. They know the pilots of Flight 592 reported smoke in the cabin. Now they need to find out what caused it.
All right, let's get to work.
The team is led by veteran investigator Greg Feith.
You got to step back, take a deep breath, and then start to prioritize. Okay, what do I have to do now? And then utilize the resources to make that happen. It's showtime. Here we go.
I'll let Craig answer that, but there's actually no way to tell if the pilots were conscious or unconscious at the time of impact.
My first thought is, how am I going to pull this off?
Feith faces intense pressure to come up with answers, and quickly.
I'm determined to do everything I can to make sure that American aviation is the safest in the world.
The NTSB briefs the many volunteers who've come to help recover the wreckage.
Use your eyes. We've drawn up a grid. We're going to scour this swamp quadrant by quadrant.
Everybody's looking to me for the answers because I am in charge of the investigation. What are we going to do? What do you want us to do? Where do you want us to go?
The first priority is to find the aircraft's 2 black boxes.
This is what we're looking for. This here is the data recorder. And this here is the voice recorder. You find one, you'll probably find the other one close by.
From the CVR, investigators hope to hear the last sounds in the cockpit, pilot conversation,
We need to go back to Miami.
and any alarms that might help identify where the smoke originated. The flight data recorder should reveal how a fire might have spread through the sequence of failures it likely caused. Each Each box holds clues that could help investigators uncover the precise cause of the crash.
You find one. Cold beer's on me.
The black boxes emit a constant radio signal. Searchers will use a sonar scanner to pick up that signal.
How soon can we get out there with the sonar? Sonar's on its way.
They'll be able to pick up those pingers that hopefully identify where, in fact, those boxes lie in the wreckage.
But Navy technicians soon find that their sophisticated gear is no match for the Everglades.
Side scan sonar didn't work because the sawgrass is so dense it can't see through the sawgrass. What really worked for us was going back to the basics. We had a line of what we call divers that had to walk basically shoulder length apart, and we would cover specific areas, probing till we hit something hard. It ended up being human power that really helped us recover better than 75% of the aircraft.
As the Everglades search continues, investigators in Miami dig through Flight 592's records, looking for clues as to what might have caused a fire. They soon learn that the flight was delayed earlier in the day due to minor electrical problems. The find raises concern that an electrical fire brought down the plane.
We were looking at any explanation. There could have been a fault in the wiring or a short circuit, and we realized it's going to be a very difficult investigation.
Recovery teams continue to battle intense heat.
Florida, in May, 90 degrees, 95% humidity. We had to worry about how long can you be in that heat.
You're trudging through in your waders, and you're stepping on stuff. You have to bend down and you have to pick it up and see what it is.
There were times where, you'd think you're picking up a wire bundle, and it was a snake. You're picking up the back end of a snake. So it was all of those things that made this